KD says Future continues to establish himself as an all-timer. What do you take from that, and what did you take from this Future album as far as like legacy?
When I heard this album, I almost felt like Future had been disrespected,
Okay.
and he had heard the disrespect, because doesn't it sound like his most clear and concise album possibly ever, and definitely like I can't think of anything pre 2017 or 16 that's even deserves to be mentioned with this project. He sounds reinvigorated. Like he sounds like somebody that's taken something personal in terms of like his legacy or his era. Like he sounds like somebody's been disrespected that's refocused back in.
I don't think that there's anybody in this era of time that can seamlessly make street records and radio records in the way that Future is able to do so. He's able to make anthems at will. He can collaborate if he wants to, because he doesn't have to collaborate with anybody. I think the collaborators need him more than he needs them, i.e. Drake, and we'll get to that in a second too. Mad Max says, what did Oscar win before Kareem? We're not going to go backwards, guys. We're not going to go backwards. Somebody said Future is better than Will.
And that's why Oscar's after Will. Hello, message. Oscar got one ring. Notice he didn't make my top 15.
I want to get to this part of the track list.
Play a team sport. You play to win. You don't play to be happy and pad stats, motherfuckers. Hello.
They say Future's better than Will. Okay.
Damn right. Got more rings.
So, one thing that I saw interesting on this track list when it got released the other day is Drake is on here twice. Now, pull out my notes here.
Drake notes are enough to talk about the show.
So this is the thing, man. I know people talk about Drake as, whatever of this era, the king of this era. I've heard many people say that. I've heard people say that Drake is the Michael Jackson of this era, or whatever they say. Now, let's take this back. Let's talk about like maybe when Jay-Z was running the game in the early 2000s, late 90s or whatever. You think there's somebody's album that he's going to show up on twice that ain't a Rockefeller artist?
I didn't know you were gonna hit me like that, Mike. So
you the man, right? And so your last couple singles, you need a Future on them, okay? Way Too Sexy or whatever. Future, you need that. D4L, you need a Future for that. Life is Good, need a Future for that as well. Boom. Some of the stuff that you put out is really not connecting like that. Okay, let me jump on Future's album twice. And they did the predictable, let me do a slow song and let me do a club song. Now, more than likely, obviously, anybody who collaborates with Drake, it's going to help their streams, right? But the benefit
not
here for
guy.
Drake, yeah.
Not this guy.
The benefit here for Drake is the fact that this album, this Future album, is going to get Drake on the radio and in the club with these two individual songs. The way that they approached it, Future, listen, man, Drake needs Future.
Hold on.
If Future didn't exist, Drake wouldn't have any more hits out here.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to let the Bill Russell Wilt thing go right after this, though, because my boy Andrew just hit me with something because he's watching who I do the Mirror Music podcast with. He said, y'all did all this without even addressing the shit that Bill Russell had to deal with as an outspoken black man in the 1960s in Boston. Next, Mike. That's what I'm saying. Like, Bill Russell was dealing with some stuff and winning on top of that, on top of making those white boys he was playing with better. But anyway, let's talk about Future making Drake better. Kind of like Bill Russell was making those white boys better, because it's the same thing going on. It's great context.
Future makes everybody better, but the person who benefits the most,
first and foremost, is Drake.
and see, the thing is, I think the even partnership is actually Future and Young Thug. There's nothing that Future really needs from Drake.
That's the real. I think that's the real fun. Let's get together and really share ideas and thoughts and get it in type of vibe and collab is what goes on with Future and Thug. It's more organic. It's more, it's just more natural. But a lot of that, I mean,
that's how,
That's
You
you
could
know how
tell they
down
would be
here,
collaborating together even if it wasn't major parties involved. I'm
right?
just
So
gonna keep it all the way above. And the
man,
Drake fans can feel however they want to feel, but Drake is using Future. Now obviously Future is using Drake for the amount of streams that he's gonna get, because anybody that collaborates with Drake is gonna, you know, they're gonna do numbers, but it damn near feels like, I mean, is Future writing his stuff or something? Like, I don't know.
Drake fits perfect for Drake is perfect for for Future's toxic motifs, quite frankly. Like Drake is perfect for Future's toxic motifs. You understand that? And
I agree.
so you think so you would think that Drake is using Future, but Future is kind of using Drake too because he works well for the motifs that Future likes to put out because Drake smooths it over well. And I don't know about you, is it just me, or is not only is Drake's hits attached to Future, but his best rapping is attached to the songs that he's on with Future. It's like when Future's around, and that's why I feel you're like, well, is Future writing for him? Because it almost seems like his bar game lately is different when he's rapping with Future. Is that like a comfort? Is that a comfort place for him as an artist now?
I don't think there's anybody that has been an elite MC or elite hip hop artist, let's say, that's had to lean on another individual that doesn't get the credit they deserve, like Drake has leaned on Future. If we sit here and look at it, you know what I mean?
Well, he's not an elite MC, first of all. That's why I keep saying when people keep talking about him as this elite all-time great MC, they need to be talking about Wayne.
Yeah, I agree.
That's who the elite all-time great MC is out of that camp, out of this era.
And I was listening to some of Future and Wayne's collaborations. Their collaborations are crazy. And again, Wayne's collaborations with everybody else is really good. Future's probably one of the best collaborative hip hop artists that there is. I think.
You want to know what?
I think on that little chart that the viral chart that people were putting out, I put Future as best collaborator. And yeah, he adds to everybody.
I will say this about your pick for Future, and here's where your pick is valid. That pick is more of he's the top to bottom pick. And here's what I mean when I say top to bottom pick. I picked somebody at the top, as in, well, I picked the person that steals the most scenes. That's big. You pick the guy that always performs well, no matter who he performs with, whether he steals the scene or not. Even when Future doesn't steal the scene, the record probably still comes off well, and he steals the scene oftentimes, even from people like Drake and Thug and Gunner. And so when you were talking about him in relationship, I think that says a lot about him. It's like he can have the worst verse on the song, the best verse, the most memorable moment, but the song typically when he collabs with somebody is going to be pretty damn good. This album is more evidence to that.
And to piggyback off of that, when Drake collaborates with Future on Drake's albums, it's the highlight of Drake's albums. Drake's collaborations with Future on here aren't the highlights of Future's. They're just songs
to finish up the project.
Exactly. It's just another song when you work with me. But when I work with you, it's the best stuff on your project. It's interesting. Now, speaking of which, I think that the highlight feature on here is Kanye's feature.
I agree.
And on Keep It Burning, they just dropped a dope video for it. And we're going to get to that in a second, too, because we're going to talk about Pusha T's music video for Call My Bluff. And we're going to talk about that music video and just contrasting of, styles and, what they're bringing to the table, which I think is an interesting discussion. But Kanye sounded reinvigorated because I think last week I sat here on this microphone and was talking about how out of it and uninspired Kanye sounded when he was rapping on Pusha T's album. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of thinking like, damn, man, like, is this going to be a continued downward spiral, for lack of a better term? And no, it wasn't. That didn't last long. That lasted for a week. Kanye sounded like he was ready on this album. And, I mean, from the intensity, the words, his delivery, they're an unlikely couple, but I like them together. And even though they worked together on Donda 2, which I still haven't heard, this this song was dope. Shout out to Jay Short with the super chat. He says, "How do you judge Future all time when he puts out so much material? What's a mixtape versus an album? It's a little unfair because we just ignore the mediocre where it counts for '90s artists." Hmm.
That's I get what he is trying to say. So we try to measure things on a scale and a barometer where it's like, well, you have to understand that it's like, well, those guys, let's go to Nas and Jay, for instance. No, they did a lot of running up to like Hot 97, a lot of mixtape stuff, a lot of Clue stuff, a lot of side stuff. And so you can still kind of weigh it on a certain level. Like, remember the Professional Part 2 that got, there's a Jay's rapping over the Who Shot You beat on the Professional Part 2. And you got Nas with Live from the Bridge. So it's like those guys were active with all the subsidiary stuff. It was just different in terms of the volume and in terms of the access. And so their albums are going to get weighed heavier because of that. Like, that's not our fault. That's just how the game goes. And we're not like sidestepping Future. Like, Future's not a top 20 rapper of all time to me, but is he one of the 20 most important rappers of all time? Like, probably.
Yeah. His impact is crazy.
It's crazy, Mike. You and I behind the scenes, we're doing the rundown of everybody he's influenced, who he doesn't mind still doing songs, whole length projects with, giving a verse to, like guys who are responsible for a movement the way that he is and for a sound the way that he is. They're usually not comfortable sharing the mic the way that he is. Yeah. It's like with him, he's like, no, he's like, Gunna, yep.
He won't just do a song with you. He'll do a whole project with you.
Who want what?
Yeah.
I got, because, and for me, I love that about him the most because that lets me know how secure he is in his shit.
And it doesn't matter if you're, it doesn't matter if you're new or established. He'll make a project with you. He did a project with Juice WRLD out the gate.
I'm Future.
Yeah.
So what?
He did a project with Lil Uzi out the gate.
That's all-time great MC type of swagger. You know what I mean? It don't matter who the other guy is. I'm Future.
Yeah.
So let's go. Uzi want to do a project? Let's go.
Nas the GOAT asked, what would you say is the best song on this album?
I don't know. He has a lot of stuff on here. Keep It Burning comes to mind. The beginning 7:12 p.m. with the Kill Jill inspired still intro came to mind. Because he goes in to start this album off. Like, he lets you know that this is going to be a rapping project from him, even if it's Future style rapping, it's going to be a rapping project. 7:12 p.m. lets you know that.
Mm-hmm.
Keep It Burning, dope. Puffing on Zooties. Yeah. The Love You Better. Love You Better, I was like, this is the epitome of why why Future makes all the toxic memes. Like Love You Better is why Drake and Future are like the toxic guys of this culture. Chickens is dope, but Voodoo and Holy Ghost just kind of got me. That's where this album turned for me.
Mm-hmm.
Voodoo and Holy, because when I heard the records and then I looked at the names of the song, because I was riding and I was like, what's the name of this record? Because I was listening to Kodak's Hook and I was like, what's the name of this record? And it said Voodoo. And then it went into Holy Ghost and he's snapping on Holy Ghost. Holy Ghost might be his best performance on this album on the mic. I was like, and that made me literally pull the album up and look at where I was. I was like, I'm on track 12 and 13. I was like, this shit fire.
Nas the GOAT says Future is the greatest trap rapper of all time, in my opinion.
He might be.
I think the thing that's very tough
have a conversation, Mike.
I think the thing that's very tough for people to judge Future, and I was thinking about this when we had to listen to this album and actually review it, is just his style of rap is so much different than what we traditionally call rap and MCing. So it's hard to say, okay, Future made the best rap album of the year because it's like the bars and everything are put in such a different format. It's like, is he rapping? Is he singing? He's not really doing either. He's more of a rapper, I guess, but even with that, he's not rapping in a syncopated pace that we're used to calling it rap. So it makes it very difficult to, judge when it comes to, putting him up next to his peers. But what I will say, and I think I was telling you this offline, I feel like he had more substance on this album than Pusha did last week. And it's like, even with his style of rap and his approach, I feel like he told us more about him than I heard from It's Almost Dry.
Can I tell you something that I got away from this album? And it's something that I didn't realize how well that he did it. He's very good at being honest with you in brief abstract moments. It's
Right.
just you have to be ready to deal with what his brief abstract moment is. And so I'm going to give you the guy who does that greatest, and that's Nas, that brief abstract moment. So there's a lot of bars like this on this album that I'm about to quote. They're just not at the level rhyme-wise that this is. You remember Watch Them Niggas, where he says, I got no game. It's just some bitches understand my story.
Yeah.
That's how Future raps. That arbitrary abstract bar and thought. Well, Future raps like that with the abstract thought. And it's like the sentiment is actually kind of deep when you think about it. And he does some of that. It's just like you got to accept what his idea, the depth is. Like when he says, I don't drink liquor, I drink lean. It's like, oh, got you. So he does a lot of that, but you have to respect that he does it well. You just can't be expecting that Nas level of depth to it. But the abstract honesty and thought is there. And so I get what you're saying, because he gives you that abstract thought and pierce into his soul more than Pusha does. Because like I told you, outside of Brambleton and Smoking Shine the Coop, you really don't get that poignant, in Malice's verse, you don't get that poignant insight of what the dope game really means. That's why I love Smoker Signs' Coop, where he's like, the dope game ruined my youth. Those are those abstract moments that I was looking for him to pontificate more upon, and he does it on Brambleton. If I never sold for you, then I'm 95% of who. Those, like, that album is missing that outside of the first two records. The rest of the records are just a display of his skill level.
Yeah.
And vocals and his chops.
It's all entertainment at that point.
It's all entertainment after that. It's not depth. It's I'm a dope all-time great MC. It's like, well, duh, I've been saying that on this podcast since I jumped up here. I already knew that. Tell the people something they don't know.
Shout out to Blue Collar Hustle with the super chat. He said, Future album is some mid. You guys weighed Pusha's album harshly for claiming album of the year with Almost Dry, but you're giving Future passes, claiming he's the best rapper alive. I do want to address that best rapper alive thing too.
He didn't say he was the best rapper alive. He could never be the best rapper. I'm not even sure if what I just heard was rap.
Right. Mad Max says Future is not difficult to judge. He's a great rap artist. He's just not lyrical, and his content isn't profound, but he's fun, and his blues flows melodies. Number one.
Let's get into the James Brown thing. No, because he went to blues and melodies, so let's go ahead and do the James Brown thing right now, Mike.
Well, I've always said on this podcast that, Future is James Brown of this era, and I'm not saying this in a way, because, first of all, let me say this. James Brown is the most important... James Brown is the most important artist in popular music, period.
History.
Yeah, history, period.
True.
So, but what James Brown did was he approached music on a different level in, let's just say, in the R&B soul sector at a time where artists were singing, writing, making melodies, and chorus, verse, formats like that. He came in grunting, chanting, and I'm sure most people who were writing and singing in a melodic way were probably looking at what he was doing like, what is he doing? That's not music. I'm sure people's parents at that era were like, that's not music you're listening to. But I think what Future does to hip-hop, and most hip-hop purists, is something similar to that. What he's doing is not what we're used to when it comes to what we know of as rap. I mean, we were just going on and on about Only Built for Cuban Links. In my mind, that's what spitting is. That's what rap is. But when somebody like Future comes along, I remember the first time I heard Racks on Racks. And I heard Future's verse specifically. I was riding down, it might have been riding down Ashford Dunwoody. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I was like, I can't even understand what he's saying. Sounds like he's rapping underwater. But he kept doing that. And 10 years later, 12 years later, everyone sounds like him. And I think that's where that James Brown component, or if you want to say George Clinton component, or whatever, fits in for me. And when he says he's the best rapper alive, I guess it depends on what era you identify rap with. Because for a certain generation that identifies rap with all of his sons and all of the people that he birthed, he is that. Now, if you come from a different school of rap, then yeah, you think that statement is ridiculous. But when we really look into it and look at what he's changed the tone of what rap is to a certain sector, it's not a ridiculous statement. I mean, am I off on that?
You're not as off as I used to feel, because I think I'm one of those guys that I tend to be of the old school hip hop sentiment, where it's like, well, what this guy does really isn't rap, so get off my lawn with that James Brown talk. And I've taken issue with you live with it on the show about it. But here's what I would submit to you, and this is for all the people that think that like I can't be moved or pivoted off of a thought or a process. It's not that I can't be pivoted or moved off a process or a thought. It's like, well, give me something to go off of that gives me a reason to pivot. Because when you pick up your pivot on the basketball court, Mike, and you move, you travel. I'm not trying to travel with it. I'm trying to stay with what I know with it, and so I don't pivot too often. But here's what I will tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Since you've been having this conversation about the whole James Brown thing, I remember the first time I really listened to Future. I have a younger sister who's 15 years younger than me. She's my youngest sister. She's 25. She lives in Miami. She was in high school. So this is almost 10 years ago. I think 9 years ago to be exact, because I feel like it was the year she was turning 16. And I think it was Dirty Sprite, Volume 1, Dirty Sprite.
Mm-hmm. Sounds about right.
I'm picking her up from cheerleading practice at North Cobb. She was the head cheerleader at North Cobb. You know, Coop. And she's like, Coop, listen to this shit. And I'm like, who is it? She's like, it's Future. I'm like, the Tony Montana guy? I'm like, no. You're not checking up on my aunt's Tony Montana. Like, no. She's like, no, you need to listen to what he got next. Now, when she played it, I was like, this is some trash.
Yeah.
But that's the get off
my lawn, yeah.
That's the get off the lawn me that just aesthetically is listening to the first time in my hip hop sentiment that thinks Illmatic is the greatest rap album of all time, and Chuck D saying and Flavor Flav saying fuck him and John Wayne is like one of the 10 most important black moments in history. Like the part of me is coming out when I'm listening to the Future album. But when you sit back objectively and just look at what he's done and how influential it has been to a whole culture and a whole
generation.
Into a whole generation.
We just got finished talking about Suck MCs. Like when Suck MCs dropped.
I want you to understand, half the Southern rap that we listen to probably isn't even out right now if Future doesn't drop that mixtape that I don't
Not
like.
even just Southern. Everywhere. Lil Uzi's from Philly. Or outside of Philly. Jay Short with the super chat says, Future and Nate Dogg verses and hooks. I mean, that's two different things, but yeah. I mean,
Mike, I don't think you understand. I'm in my whip. Like, Mike, here's how long ago it was. I think I'm in my old Infinity, like the old butterscotch. When I'm check up on my ends, Tony, that nigga, Lil, you playing him? I'm like, y'all tripping. She like, no, this shit fire, bro. You not listening.
I want to piggyback on that. Let me get to these super chats real quick. LP says, cool, Brambleton is easily the best song on there.
Easy. Brambleton and Smoker Shine the Coop.
Yeah. Mad Max says, and there's a difference between rap artist and an MC. LOL, because MC Future is as an MC Future is not good.
So listen to this. I didn't understand that until DJ Premier explained it. He was like, remember like the DJ magazine, Scratch. He did an interview in Scratch magazine where he was talking about, well, Jay's an all-time great rapper. Nas is an all-time great MC. I'm like, what the fuck is that? I'm like, what did he say?
That kind of sounds like a slight when it comes to somebody like Jay, though. But I get it.
No, I get what he was saying when he was saying that, though.
Yeah. Michael Sanders with the super chat. He says, Young Thug is Future's clone. So was Juice WRLD and Uzi. Notice he makes music with his sons. Yeah. Nas the Goat says, I go to Future for the trap talk, the beats, and the melodies. Just like people go to Pusha T for the coke talk. Future is great at what he does.
He is.
Yeah.
No, so when you're saying James Brown, so how about this? Pusha T's coke talk hasn't inspired a generation the way Future's mumbling ass, codeine, pill, lace, whatever it is that he's doing, Mike. Yeah. It's the James Brown effect where it's, hey!
Yeah, it is. I mean, because James Brown brought the funk to the table. You know, he had everybody making their music on the one. And I think that as far as like the approach, the way that you change everybody's approach, I can't think of many people who did that in this era like Future has done it.
So, no, I get what you're saying.
It's like Rakim, when Rakim made everybody change their approach.
No, so I get what you're saying. So, in respect, and I think we have to scale it back a little bit. Well, Rakim is still responsible rhyme-wise for how the whole East Coast sounds, and partially for how the rest of us sound.
Yeah,
just
definitely.
like James Brown is responsible for Michael Jackson and Prince. So Future's impact
and a lot
isn't
between.
Like that. No. So Future's impact isn't like that. And that's what I'm saying is like, well, James Brown can go to his legacy and be like, well, you see Michael Jackson and Prince, right?
Right.
Well, Rakim can go like to Nas and to J. Cole and be like, so Future's legacy isn't like that, but I get the comparison that you're making now because there's really, because for what he's done, well, there's really nobody to compare him to except for epic type guys, because only epic type guys have really pulled off what he's pulled off, which is to change the way that people think about some of this rap shit to the point that there's a whole subgenre of it. It's like, I believe, Mike, I don't even believe that there was a such thing as underground before Rakim made Follow the Leader. Because lyrically, nobody had ever pushed the boundary to take it there, to take it underground. Like he took it outer space, but the outer space thoughts is what really took it underground. That's what I mean is like that shit hits different. That's why it's the basis for what lyricism is, because it took everybody everywhere. Like, no, like, can you do this on the mic? And he's done some of that, just not to that level.
Well, see, I want to piggyback on your sentiments about, you know, what your sister was telling you back then. Because really, when we talk about hip-hop, even all the way to the core, going all the way back to the early 70s, this is about the kids, man. This is about the youth. And those stories that you hear about when people heard Sucker MCs from Run DMC for the first time, that's the youth that was going crazy over that. The youth was going crazy when Eric B. as President dropped. The youth was going crazy when Public Enemy dropped, Rebel Without a Pause, when Illmatic dropped. So when you're able to change up things and you got the kids telling the older people like, yo, this is it.
This is it.
That person is doing something.
You've done something.
Historic.
In retrospect, when I look back,
because older people ain't going to get it.
Well, no. Well, see, you have to understand. See, that's what I'm saying. It's like, well, that was my little sister in high school. My little sister, a grown-ass woman with her own little condo in Miami working for Amazon, doing HR and shit now. And it's like, I look back at that moment and it's like, oh, this grown-ass woman put me on Future 10 years ago. You feel me? But she was a little cheerleader in high school then, but I wasn't really listening then.
It's the kids that's going to put you on to what's next.
Put you on to what's next.
Because they're in their impressionable stages. Right. And their ear is different.
There was no Kodak and Uzi and these motherfuckers 10 years ago when Future did this, but it's like they all exist now. And not only do they exist now, they're large.
They were raised on this shit.
You know why they're large? This guy that my sister was trying to tell me when I was picking her up from cheerleading practice that day. This guy.
I was watching. when the Suns won their series, they were talking to Devin Booker. He said he had been watching Chris
Know that.
Paul play since he was 8 years old. That's what this is. You know
That's
what I'm
what this
saying?
is.
Like, this whole generation was raised on Future.
Yeah.
And so if they want to call him the best rapper alive based on those things,
No.
I'm not mad at that.
How about this? He's more deserving than Drake is.
Of course he is.
He's more deserving than Drake is.
Because Drake has to continuously run to him. LP with the super chat.
And then Quentin Miller floating around Future. It's Future.
Yeah. LP says Future comes from the Dungeon family tree. He knows how to find the right pocket. Take Future's words off the melodies and the beats still hit. That's another thing that I got from this album.
We had this conversation yesterday or 2 days ago, didn't we?
I think we were talking about this in the pregame. Yeah, he comes from the Dungeon family. So when it comes to production, and the production is there on this album, and that was one of the things that I noticed too. I'm like, other people get some of these same producers, but when Future gets on it, it's different. It goes.